Snow fell the way it only does in late January. Slow, steady, and without drama. It drifted straight down from a pale gray sky, softening every sound, covering every sharp edge. The small cemetery on the northern edge of town looked less like a place of mourning and more like a forgotten field, untouched and still. 6 people stood near an open grave. They were bundled in dark coats, hats pulled low, hands buried deep in pockets. No one spoke much. There were no flowers beyond a single wreath, already dusted white. No distant family members flown in. No murmured stories traded among old friends. Just 6 figures, a minister with a folded paper, and a name carved into a temporary marker. Thomas Edwin Hale, born 1946, veteran. That was all most of them knew. Tom Hale had lived in town for nearly 20 years, yet few could say they truly knew him. He rented a small house near the tree line, walked into town once a week for groceries, nodded politely to neighbors, and rarely spoke unless spoken to. He never complained, never shared stories, never drank at the pub or joined any group. He paid his bills on time and kept his porch swept, even in winter. When he died quietly in his sleep, the town noticed, but only just. The minister cleared his throat, his breath fogging in the cold air. He read a brief prayer, spoke a few respectful words about service and rest, then folded the paper again. The wind stirred slightly, lifting snow from the surrounding headstones. "That will conclude our service," he said gently. No one moved at first. Leaving felt wrong, yet there was nothing more to do. One by one, they turned toward the narrow path, leading back to the road. That was when the dog appeared. At first, it was just a shape, large and dark, moving between the bare trees beyond the cemetery fence. Someone paused, squinting through the falling snow. Then the shape stepped into the open. A German shepherd. He was big, though age had thinned him slightly. His coat was thick, mottled with gray around the muzzle and ears, snow clinging to his back and tail. He walked slowly, but with purpose. Head low, eyes fixed ahead. No one said a word. The dog passed through the open gate without hesitation, crossed the cemetery grounds, and went straight to the fresh mound of earth. He stopped there, sat down heavily, and lowered his head. He did not bark. He did not whine. He simply stayed. Minutes passed. Snow continued to fall. The minister shifted his weight. Uncertain, one of the mourners took a cautious step forward. "Well," someone murmured. "He must belong to someone." No owner appeared. The groundskeeper, an older man named Arthur Bell, approached slowly. "Easy, boy," he said softly. The dog stood, stepped forward, and placed himself directly in front of the grave. Not threatening, just firm. His body was still, but his intent was unmistakable. Arthur stopped. "I've worked here 30 years, he said later. "Never seen anything like it." Eventually, with careful movements and quiet voices, they coaxed the dog away. He followed reluctantly, turning back again and again, eyes never leaving the grave, until the bend in the path finally hid it from view. That night, the snow kept falling. The local animal shelter scanned the dog the following morning. A microchip registered immediately. Name, Shadow. Owner, Thomas Hale. The room fell silent. Shadow ate little that day. He paced his kennel, restless, ears pricked at every sound. When taken outside, he pulled hard on the leash. Not toward the road, not toward town, but north, toward the cemetery and the woods beyond. "He knows something," one volunteer whispered. After 2 days of this behavior, curiosity outweighed caution. Emily Rhodes, a retired school teacher who volunteered at the shelter twice a week, clipped on Shadow's leash and followed where he led. Snow crunched beneath their boots as they passed the cemetery gate and continued into the forest beyond. The path was barely visible, a narrow depression winding through trees, heavy with snow. Shadow moved with certainty, stopping only once to look back, as if making sure she was still there. After nearly half a mile, they reached a small clearing. At first, Emily thought it was nothing. A patch of disturbed snow, a mound no different from the others. Then she saw the wooden door. It was set low into the ground, weathered but solid, its edges carefully sealed. A padlock hung frozen in place. Emily felt a chill that had nothing to do with the cold. Town officials were called. The lock was cut. The door opened. Beneath it lay a narrow underground room, carefully constructed and surprisingly dry. Shelves lined the walls, filled with boxes, binders, and journals. A small heater sat in one corner, unplugged now, but evidence it had been used regularly. On a simple table lay a folded American flag. Shadow stepped inside, sat down, and waited. What they found inside took days to understand. The journals were meticulous. Dates, locations, names crossed out or replaced with initials, missions described without flourish or pride, only facts and consequences. Tom Hale had been part of a unit that officially did not exist, tasked with operations during the Cold War, that were never meant to be public. When the unit was dissolved, the men were sworn to silence. No medals, no recognition, no acknowledgement. Tom kept his word. He wrote of coming home, of trying to live quietly, of the weight of memory. He wrote of Shadow, assigned to him overseas, trained to follow commands without question, yet capable of fierce loyalty beyond duty. He remembers everything. One entry read, "Better than I do some days." The final journal ended with a short note, written shakily. "If anyone finds this, please don't let him be alone." The town gathered again a week later. This time, there were dozens of people, veterans in worn coats, families, neighbors who wished they'd known him better. Snow fell once more, but the silence felt different now. Full, not empty. Shadow walked to the grave on his own and sat. A flag was unfolded, a salute rendered, a letter read aloud, acknowledging service long hidden. When it ended, Shadow stood, turned, and walked away, not toward the woods, but toward the people. For the first time, he did not look back. Shadow went home with Arthur Bell, the groundskeeper. Each morning, they walked past the grave. Shadow paused, sat briefly, then moved on. The underground room was sealed, its contents preserved. Tom Hale's name was added to a memorial wall in the city, and in town, people spoke of him now, not loudly, not often, but with respect. On snowy mornings, when the world felt hushed and still, some swore they saw a German shepherd sitting patiently beside a grave, keeping watch. Winter settled in deeper after the second gathering, as though the land itself had decided not to let go just yet. Snowbanks grew taller along the roads. The river slowed and darkened beneath its crust of ice. In the mornings, frost traced white lace along window panes across town. Arthur Bell had never planned to share his small house with a dog. At 72, he had grown used to quiet routines. Early mornings, simple meals, long walks through the cemetery he tended like a garden of memories. Yet Shadow fit into that rhythm, as though he had always belonged there. The first night, Shadow lay on the rug near the fireplace, head resting on his paws, eyes open long after Arthur had gone to bed. When Arthur woke before dawn, Shadow was already sitting by the door, waiting. They walked together through the snow, past rows of headstones softened by white. Shadow moved steadily, no longer pulling, no longer restless. When they reached Tom Hale's grave, Shadow stopped. He sat and bowed his head. Arthur stood beside him, hat in hand, saying nothing. They stayed like that for several minutes. Then Shadow rose and continued down the path. "It's like a routine," Arthur later told Emily, "as if he just needs to check in." Word of Shadow's behavior spread quietly. People began taking longer routes on their morning walks, passing through the cemetery, just in case they might see him. Some left small flags or wreaths near the grave. Others simply stopped, removed their hats, and stood a moment longer than they otherwise would have. Emily visited often. She brought biscuits for Shadow and tea for Arthur. One afternoon, while snow fell thick and slow outside the windows, she asked the question that had been lingering in many minds. "Do you think Tom knew this would happen?" she asked. Arthur considered it. "I think," he said slowly, "he hoped someone would finally see what he couldn't say." The journals were still being catalogued by a historian from the city. Portions would remain sealed for years, perhaps forever, but enough had been confirmed to warrant a quiet correction to the town's understanding of who Tom Hale had been. The local paper ran a small article on the back page. No photographs, just a few paragraphs, acknowledging service previously unrecognized. It was understated, respectful, and fitting. Veterans began stopping Arthur on his walks. Some shared stories they had never told before, about friends lost. Orders followed, silence kept. They spoke softly, often with Shadow sitting nearby, listening as though he understood every word. Shadow aged noticeably as winter wore on. His steps slowed, his hearing dulled, but his presence remained steady. He no longer slept through the night, often waking and pacing, until Arthur sat with him by the fire. One evening, as snow fell harder than it had all season, Shadow refused to lie down. He stood by the door, tail low but insistent. Arthur sighed, pulled on his coat, and opened the door. The wind cut sharp across the cemetery. Snow stung their faces as they made their way to the grave. Shadow sat, as always, but this time he did not rise. When Arthur touched his shoulder, Arthur knelt beside him. "It's all right, boy," he whispered. Shadow leaned into him once, just slightly, and then went still. The town gathered a third time. There was no grave dug this time, just a small marker placed beside Tom Hale's. Snow fell gently, as it always seemed to now. Arthur stood with his hands clasped, Emily beside him, the townspeople forming a quiet circle. No speeches were given. They didn't need them. Shadow was laid to rest, next to the man who had been his whole world. Two lives bound by service, silence, and loyalty beyond words. Spring came slowly that year. Snow receded inch by inch. Grass reappeared, pale and tentative. The cemetery changed again, colors returning where white had ruled for months. Arthur still walked the paths every morning. He stopped at the two markers, touched the brim of his hat, and moved on. People remembered now, not just the story, but the lesson. Some sacrifices are carried quietly. Some truths are guarded by those who cannot speak. And sometimes it takes the faithfulness of a dog to remind the world not to forget. On certain mornings, when snow fell unexpectedly late in the season, visitors swore they saw two sets of tracks near the graves, one human, one canine, side by side, leading away into the trees. No one tried to explain it. Some things didn't need explaining.